They are making video games that are, for the first time in probably decades, depicting parenthood in a positive and endearing light. And the situation on the ground is suggesting that this could single-handedly psyop an entire generation of women into having children, because of this one game and the surrounding memes and conversation. So we will discuss that, pro-natalism, fertility rates, how all of that actually works. Also, speaking of relationships, there was a study that just came out showing that brides who do not take their husband's last names are far more likely to divorce. And then Tucker Carlson breaks my heart yet again by saying literally the most retarded thing I've ever heard as of the time of this taping. Finally, Barack Obama and Mamdani visit a classroom filled with children who somehow have even less American-sounding names than they do. Do stay tuned. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the John Doyle Show. Sorry to keep you waiting. Very complicated business. Everyone was adding me on Twitter, where's the show? I didn't literally tell you exactly where the show would be at the conclusion of our last episode 2 Fridays ago. Fake fans. Yeah, we were at the producer Blake wedding. Very exciting. Speaking of relationships, got to see everybody, got to see the boy get married. A lot of fun at the reception. I am told that the bar, not at the reception, but at the rehearsal dinner, actually somehow lost money on our party, which, how does that even happen? You would think that there's a baseline margin. Apparently, they lost money on it. We set the record for the all-time greatest in quantity order of green tea shots. I spent a certain amount of money, I think 25 green tea shots, which, by the way, that's just that's free game for you out there. You simply go up to the bridal party and say something to the effect of does anyone want a green tea shot? You guys look like you could use some green tea shots, and they will immediately flock. It's like if you went to a pond with a bag of bread or something and all of the ducks come up to you. That's basically what happened. So we had a great time there. Very excited about that. But in other things that are very exciting, there was this video game that I guess just came out or something. People are talking about it. I still am culturally a gamer in the sense that I'm racist, but I don't really play video games as much as I used to, perhaps. I think that the whole industry has gone downhill for a lot of reasons, which perhaps can be explained by my other hobby. But there's this game that just came out, Pragmata. I'll read you the Wikipedia summary. It says it's a 2026 action-adventure game developed and published by Capcom, of course, Resident Evil Patriots, set on a lunar research station. The game follows spacefarer Hugh and android Diana as they work together to fight a hostile AI known as Idus that is controlling the station and return to Earth. The game was released on April 17th for the PlayStation 5, Windows, Xbox Series X, and Nintendo Switch. So essentially what people are taking from this, aside from the gameplay, is there is, a recurring kind of environment throughout the game where it depicts child raising children, fatherhood, being a girl dad in a very positive and endearing way, rather than what is typically the case in all forms of media, which is something that is overwhelmingly negative, something that is trying to emphasize to the potential or prospective parent how draining the process of raising a child is, how you would be far better off just pursuing spreadsheets and hedonism and whatever it may be. So I want to show you a video here so you can kind of see what we are talking about. Take a look.
Look at that, Hugh.
So yeah, this doesn't appear to be anything that's actually advancing the gameplay. Again, I don't know, I haven't played it, but it's just something that's going on in the background to kind of contribute to the atmosphere in which the game takes place. And I think that's very important because quite often what we try to do to, get our politics across is we try to shoehorn it into people's mental bandwidth, to their media consumption bandwidth, and it just feels very forced. It's very unnatural. So, if a conservative wanted to make a game to, raise the fertility rate, he would make a video he would make a video game that's like, you know, you get to play as a husband and you press X to praise your wife. It's like press X to tell her she's doing a great job in the kitchen, she's doing a great job being a mom, you know, all this stuff is just like very forced, very artificial. Whereas something like this is just a game that has a mainstream audience, it's very popular, and it just so happens to include this depiction of, I don't even know if it's fatherhood. Again, I don't even know what's going on in this game. All I know is that we're seeing a little girl run around and she's exploring the world, right? She has a curiosity. She's interacting with the world around her, spinning the globe. And if you've ever spent time around little boys or little girls, like I had nieces growing up, and this is just, there is something too about the girl dad, right? That this is something that has been discussed more frequently online, where I can like witness the behavior of like little boys and it gets me like, you know, let's go. Like I am relating to the impulse to just want to run around and terrorize everything and destroy everything. And you have to keep an eye on them because they always have a scheme. And they will pretend that they don't have a scheme and they will not meet your eye line because they know they have a scheme, but like there's always something cooking. And so on the one hand, as an adult, I have to mitigate that and temper that. But then in a much more real sense, I am like good. Yes, become who you are. But then with little girls, it's different because they are just these like little angels, right? And sometimes they get to be a little calamitous, but it is kind of like that. Like they're just kind of exploring the world around them. They have a sense of kind of grace about them, which, you know, maybe little boys don't exactly have so often. But this is the polarity, right? This is the, I guess, binary between how little boys and little girls behave. But oftentimes when you see these kinds of relationships or dynamics expressed in media, it is always the opposite, where there's actually like nothing pertaining to not even just the joy of like you feel fulfilled because you have this thing that you're responsible for, but really kind of like appreciating the beauty of like a young life, interacting with the world, exploring it. None of that is ever depicted, and it's always the stuff that is less desirable. It's always the stuff that is sleepless nights and screaming children in public and changing diapers and things getting broken and your furniture that you care about having apple juice spilled on it. You know, things like that, which are of course going to be some of the maybe more road bump type parts of being a parent and raising children and things like that. And obviously anybody who's a parent will tell you that it is neither, right? You find this balance point between things that are very good, things that are very bad, and ultimately it is worth it because of that. Like you're not expecting perfection. You're also hoping that it's not just completely the worst thing that's ever happened, but it is the same thing that your parents did for you, which is an extremely unique feeling that you'll never experience until you are in that position where you're dealing with the things that are less glamorous. You're dealing with the things that are headaches, that make you unable to sleep, that are physically draining and toiling. And then you realize that, okay, you are just paying this forward because obviously you care about your child, but also like that is what your parents did for you. And you kind of owe it to them in that sense to continue and also maybe even take care of them when they're at their old age because they are no longer able to take care of themselves. Like this is just a very healthy and natural cycle that has occurred for generations, obviously. And while I don't think that this kind of media is going to, I don't know, wake up the masses and make them realize the virtue of parenthood and everything like that, I do think that this kind of media uniquely affects the fertility rates of people who you would want to be having kids. Because the people who you want to be having kids, and I'm not saying that some people should have kids and some people shouldn't, I'm just saying when people talk about like total fertility rate, population collapse, they don't mean, just speaking about it honestly, you don't like literally mean just the people being able to replace themselves. Because civilization is not sustained just by that. Civilization is sustained by having people who are intelligent, people who are stable, people who possess a certain temperament for governing, for making the trains run on time. Those are the kinds of people you want to be having kids, specifically so they can kind of inherit that and carry the torch of their civilization. But the thing with that is that people who tend to do that, they actually tend to plan out having kids, just like they plan out everything in their lives. Credit, mortgages, whether they want to commit a crime and go to prison, like they tend to exercise a little bit more forethought all throughout the board, including and maybe even especially with having kids, because they have to have a plan to take responsibility for those children. Whereas other populations, they will have kids literally no matter what. Things in society could be going well, they could be going not well. They wouldn't know. They don't even watch the news. They're not monitoring the situation, and they know ultimately, or maybe they just get a sense that it doesn't really matter how things are going, because the kids ultimately aren't going to be their responsibility. Somebody else is going to be paying for the food, paying for the school, which functionally is just daycare, paying for the housing. All of that is going to be taken care of. And by the way, it's going to be taken care of by the people who are exercising that forethought. It's their tax dollars that are going to subsidize all of this, which is why, you know, people will accuse me of being a eugenicist, which is not the case. But I do think that there's obviously a component of genetic preference that takes place within our policy, because it's not like we're approaching this with a neutral playing field where everybody gets to just have freedom to have kids or not have kids. We are actively incorporating that, except backwards. It is dysgenics. If eugenics would be incentivizing certain people to have kids, other people to not have kids, we are doing the opposite. We are incentivizing people who maybe would not be naturally having kids to have more kids than they naturally would be having. And we are incentivizing people who would be having kids to not have kids. And so it's a completely backwards system. And then too, with the people who, maybe are not exercising so much forethought in having children, that's like actually true. It's not even that they just do it and trust that like, oh, it's going to be taken care of by the government subsidies. Most of the time they weren't even planning to have the kids anyway. Like it just happens. They just end up pregnant. They end up having kids, and these cycles continue and these generations kind of continue. And, we've seen interesting data recently too, with fertility rates in America, because obviously we've been talking about this for years now, that, the fertility rate of white people is going down, the fertility rate of everybody else is going up. You've actually seen data in just the last few months that fertility rates of white people are actually increasing. There's been a little bit of a white baby boom all throughout the country, and it's actually poised, I believe, to become the highest, like per capita TFR or whatever. Like specifically white Americans are increasing in their fertility rate, measured, of course, by births per woman, and then you are seeing decreases in other demographics. And I think that's interesting because, first of all, we saw something similar happen within the first Trump administration. You actually saw a little bit of a baby boom with specifically white Americans. And the reason for that is just obviously that white people want to feel as though we have a future in our own country. It's not controversial. It's not scary. It's a vibe. It is a vibe that we experience. And as we've been saying on the program, you can't correct for that with tax incentives. You can't correct for that with just putting out pieces of media that say, look at being a parent, so much fun. Look, it's cute. Look, it looks like you. That's not going to be enough. You're not going to positive depiction. You're not going to cute baby video your way into a higher total fertility rate. However, it is symptomatic of like an overall vibe that people are experiencing, because obviously being a parent is horrifying. I mean, people never feel like they're ready. There's always a million reasons not to do it. Everybody at every iteration of humanity, I'm sure, has expressed some argument to the effect of, well, the world is so messed up, I don't know if I can do this. That is ultimately a justification for a deeper impulse, and that impulse is going to be largely informed by the vibe of the society in which you are living. And you can be in an impoverished society, you can be in, I don't know, a chaotic society, there can even be a lot of crime, but if you still recognize it to be yours, it's going to give you a certain optimism that it can be corrected. You are in possession of this thing, this gift that your ancestors crafted. In that, there's a responsibility to perpetuate it and to continue it. However, if you feel as though it's not even yours, that's going to go away. You can live in a country which maybe has, let's just say for the sake of argument, not that this has literally ever panned out ever, it can be safer. It can be more economically prosperous. It can be all these other things, which again, bear with me. Let's put on our patriot thinking caps and be delusional for a second. But even then, it's like it's not even yours. So why would you feel that same incentive to continue it? It just, I don't think it maps out. And so you're seeing all this kind of stuff play out where now that people feel as though they've got hope for their future, they feel as though things could actually be corrected. Mass deportations, which apparently definitely aren't happening. Well, they're happening enough apparently for people to feel as though they have their own country. They have sovereignty in their own country. So the same way that you saw this under Trump administration 1.0, a small baby boom with white Americans, you're now seeing the same thing under Trump 2.0, which John Doyle predicted in 2024 was going to happen. And so ultimately, if we are concerned about fertility rates, which I don't think, by the way, is nearly as big of an issue as people want to paint it out to be, I think it's actually kind of a liberal coded concern in the sense that you are viewing human beings as literally just like integer values, and we need to maintain this number of people, and if we have this number of people, society is going to collapse. Simply not true. You need to have high quality people who are capable of practicing virtue, people who are raised in stable families, who are capable of cultivating civilization, which is a historical anomaly, by the way. That is like really more important than simply maintaining a certain size of the population. And so I'm not so concerned about simply numbers declining, even relative to other populations, in the third world. How many Brits ruled India? There are ratios to be accounted for. But in terms of if we're actually trying to kind of restore the sort of imbalances that I think have occurred because of things like feminism, all of these progressive social projects, which have been disastrous and worse, extremely annoying to me and my friends. Ultimately, I think it is correct that for that to be healed, you need to restore the kind of veneration of masculinity. And, we mentioned this a couple weeks ago on the show. People talk about religious communities having higher fertility rates. It's not because they're religious. It's not just because they are reading the Bible better than you. It's because what those communities do is they go out of their way to recreate the conditions of patriarchy. It's kind of a LARP, but it works for them because, everyone always talks about we have to raise the fertility rates by giving women money to have more kids. If you incentivize them with dollars to have more children, obviously they will have more children. It's backwards. The opposite is the case. When you give women money, they have less children every single time. When women are more educated, more employed, of greater general means, etc., they have fewer children. When given political power, what is the first thing they do? Literally every time. They maneuver to liberate themselves of the condition of their sex, birth control, abortion, laws compensating for relative physical weakness. So you disagree with her a little bit too intensely. At best, you're socially ostracized as a freaking manipulator. At worst, maybe you get a domestic violence charge on your record. That is not good. Whereas you have a society that celebrates masculinity, heroism, all of that thing. That is the only thing that can occur to actually get women to abandon that project of liberation, right? Because at that point, they're going to compete with each other for access to those men, to normal men, heroic men. They do not want to be the center of civilization. I know that they say that and they act like that, but they don't know these are not reliable narrators. It is not good for them because when you try to celebrate and elevate women, it doesn't work because one, women don't lead society. And it's not just that they don't lead society, they don't step up. They've done studies on this where you have men and women in a group or whatever, and someone has to step up to be a leader. It's not just that men don't listen to women, women do not listen to other women. Men are actually somewhat indifferent on it, but overwhelmingly in environments where there's a vacuum in leadership and it's a man's going to do it, a woman's going to do it. The women do not look to other women to do it. And in fact, they actually almost draft the men sooner than the men themselves would even step up and take charge or whatever. So it's not just men freaking oppressing women or whatever. Even women understand this about themselves intuitively, even if they've been socialized into expressing the opposite, which of course they have. But even then, what are you elevating, right? You're elevating what? And then, supposing you could even do that, you say you elevate women, you give them the power to elevate themselves. Are they going to use that power to promote and elevate traditional natural understandings of femininity? No, if they had that power to even, elevate girlhood or whatever, 10 out of 10 times, they would just use that instead to actually reject their natural role as women. They would instead try to just be men. And then they end up in this weird, uncanny valley middle zone where they're not quite men, but they're also not feminine. So they're just these androgynous, bitter beings. And they want to just, add as much company to their misery as possible, right? And also, kind of like we mentioned earlier, it's not even obvious to me that you can just encourage women to fulfill their traditional roles. You cannot press X to praise your wife as she's doing dishes or giving you children or whatever. That is not going to work. I'm sure that works for some people. I think it's a little LARPy. Again, if we're trying to scale this to civilization, to healing our entire social fabric, these roles are not just okay, we have the boy table and the girl table, and we're going to write down what we think we should do. And also, we're going to write down what we think you should do too. These are not arbitrary. These are not just assigned. These roles are a natural response to something else. And that is a response to a normal, healthy, patriarchal society. You cannot force these things. You cannot really force women into these roles. If anybody actually believes that they're forced into these roles, it's just women themselves because they're kind of weird sometimes with that stuff. When you tell women hey, we're going to have a law that says you can't do this, they immediately want to put on the Handmaid's Tale outfit and talk about these it's very bizarre situations where oh, so you want to oppress me and breed me and have all the rich men have sex. It's not what I meant. I just wanted to exercise a little bit of patriot civilization, but they immediately take it there. So I think that's a projection, frankly, not to use pop psychology vocab terms, but it's not that we want to force women to do anything. Women will naturally fall into place, and it's women who have to come in and be oh, so you're trying to force me, because their minds can get a little in the gutter sometimes. But I think that ultimately what we're experiencing right now is our own kind of genetic bottleneck, because this has obviously happened 1 billion times in the history of the world. In the past few decades of these kind of social trends, this little experiment, the result of that has created the most mediocre, bitchy, narcissistic generation of women possibly ever. And then, of course, to complement them, we have the softest, most agreeable, eunuch class of men probably ever. I literally believe that 70% of men are basically gay. So that is the minefield that we are all navigating through. And it's annoying, but it's not going to last. There's going to be something on the other side of that. And I think that, yes, media like this, video games where you're playing a game and look, it's a little girl running around and she's happy, she's just doing her thing, whatever. Media like this, and especially the positive reaction to it, shows that you're not alone in trying to navigate through this, minefield. And while some kind of like healed, restored society, it's never going to get this into niche online politics. It's never going to try to intellectualize the most intuitive process possibly ever, which is having children. It is true, though, that it is a sign, I think, that things are kind of moving along. And for better or worse, at least we're not going to be stuck here forever. So my advice is just to keep your head down and just keep moving through it. Just get through it. You're SpongeBob going through the perfume department. Just get through it as quickly as possible. Get out, because it's a mess and it's annoying. But all of these people are going to die alone. So there is kind of a justice in that. You know, history does have a way of kind of sorting out the maladjusted. And we're just in our own little patriot cycle right now. What are you going to do? So in the meantime, don't let yourself get annoyed by these people, because they are just channeling frustrations that exist innately because they are maladjusted. They've fallen victim to these kinds of social trends. And that's why you notice your offline friends are probably the happiness. You know, they might be normies. They might have dulled political instincts. But in terms of how they're experiencing society, they are far less jaded and far less black-pilled in terms of specifically male-female relationships, because all of this stuff is an op. It is an op that is being run by bad guys, evil women, gay men, and then all of their friends. And so, yeah, I would not get too tied up into that. But maybe go play the video game. Might be fun. I don't even know what it's about. Anyway, I do have to tell you, if you do find yourself becoming jaded for literally whatever reason, I would recommend consuming alcohol. Flying Ace chases legacy because it is bourbon the way it was meant to be. It's bold, it's balanced, it's unapologetically pro-patriot. There is no gimmick. There is no fluff. Famously an ingredient in whiskey. Not this one. This is whiskey made for real people who believe in real work, real standards, and doing things the right way. Whether you are winding down after a long day or with your cool friends consuming alcohol, Flying Ace is going to deliver for you literally every time, because it's not about hype. It's not even about hype too. Sorry. Hold on. It's about heritage and getting back to what bourbon was always supposed to be. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, it is time to level up. You buy online, go to flyingacespirits.com, use code BLAZE for free shipping. It is imperative that you take this medical advice. Be right back. Going to talk more about women on the internet. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the Complain About Women on the Internet program. I found a thread on Twitter talking about a study that came out pertaining to how spouses succeed or do not in their marriages based on whether the wife takes the surname of her husband. It says spouses who don't share a surname divorce at about a 50% higher rate than those who do share a surname, and their divorces come about 30% earlier in their marriages. Striking new divorce research from this place. Stone whatever, reinforces my earlier research on marital quality and naming. And so, yes, we see that couples who do and hold more things in common, from last names to Facebook profile pictures, are more likely to flourish. They have a stronger sense of family, happier marriages, and lower expectations of divorce. And so, yes, we see graphics here showing that couples who share a surname are most likely to have lower divorce rates overall. And then we see that conservative, white, and older women are likelier to take their husband's surname rather than perhaps newer generations of women, non-white generations of women, and so on. Now, this is interesting because it's just intuitive. I mean, even in like the sort of adjacent variables where it says that it's not just surnames, it's also things like, you know, matching Facebook profile pictures, whatever. It is operating with a certain like synchronization, right? Where, of course, I guess most important would be the presence of the surname, the transition of her from her father's name to now your name. I think that that is extremely important and also pretty much indicative of how the whole thing is going to go. Because ultimately, when you are married, what is occurring right now is literally the merging of two beings. You are becoming one flesh. And if you are marrying a woman who has decided that she wants to maintain an identity separate from that, which is her own identity, even though that's technically not her identity, it's her father's last name, whatever, at least it's not yours, right? She wants to maintain a certain autonomy from you. She does not really want to complete that in the way that it's been done traditionally. And you probably can, if you want to, I don't know, waste your time and spike your cortisol levels, you probably can talk her out of it. over time, I think that women just naturally become more comfortable in relationships. They sort of let go of these, kind of talking points, which TikTok has socialized them into wanting to express, because it is good, it is high status to be a girl boss. It is bad, it is low status to be a woman who is, normal. The point being, ultimately, I think that you should just kind of like stay away from these girl boss feminist types, these like career-oriented women or whatever. And the biggest red flag there, which is not so esoteric, it's perhaps more exoteric, whether or not she like is okay with taking your last name is like unironically one of the first things that you should learn during the whole like getting to know her stage, whatever you want to call it. I'm like talking to someone. If there's even the slightest bit of hesitancy, you should like probably cut and run, because you talk to like normal women, and dude, if they meet a guy that they like, the first thing they do is like try on his last name. They are excited about that. They are excited to be his companion, to be his helper. And when you have women who are viewing relationships as less that and more of like this, egalitarian partnership or whatever, where they hyphenate their last name, or it's like, I'm not your wife, I am your partner or something. It's just like, okay, dude, you don't have time. We're in a minefield. You got to just get out. These people are all going to die alone. You do not want to get involved in all of that. And two, like, think about what you're doing when you are allowing for that kind of dynamic to be expressed. Your father, your grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, they all pretty much like figured it out, right? They were able to find women who are more or less like okay with that role. Moreover, you know how your life sucks? You know how you have to go through all of this stuff all the time that sucks and makes you want to kill yourself? Yeah, imagine that, but like in several decades compounding. So you're what, 10 years old? Okay, imagine your dad who's 1 billion years old and your grandfather who's 17 billion years old. All of those years of toiling, carrying your last name, something that was bequeathed to you, a torch that was passed to you, and you're going to throw it all away for some girl? You're going to, okay, you can hyphenate your last name. Dude. They are frowning upon you. They regret the toiling. They wish that they would have just, gone like destiny hedonism mode or something rather than spawn you. And then you'd be like, well, actually, we're like equitable in our relationship and we don't believe in outdated social trends of viewing marriage as ownership over woman. Okay. All right, big guy. Well, hey, good luck. Because apparently couples who do that are more successful. And it's not just because they wave a magic wand and there's something psychologically that happens to the woman when she wears the last name of her husband. It becomes her own last name. I don't think it's that simple. It is indicative of something deeper, which is a desire within the wife to truly assimilate herself into her husband's life, and vice versa. It is about becoming something new together. Producer Blake just got married. The first thing I saw happen after the fact was his wife changed her Instagram to his last name. She was like excited about that because, it's like normal. That's like how this stuff goes. And then in a modern iteration, it's going to be, I get to change my Instagram. And it's like, okay, like cool. Like, yeah, do your thing. But when you are getting involved in a situation where there is that hesitancy, whether it's an off ramp or whatever you want to call it, I don't think that's indicative of something that's really going to go the distance. And I understand that we all have our modern take on it. We all have our thing about how it's patriarchal to have women viewed as property and they become the property of their husbands. Like, okay, yeah, it's called civilization. What did you think civilization meant? Vibes, essays? Why don't you just put a smile on, get over it, and thank us for trying to right the ship? I promise we'll all be better off for it. But anyway, speaking of retarded content on the internet that made me want to kill myself, Tucker Carlson is breaking my heart. And I really don't like to get involved in like the drama content. I'm very disheartened by how all of the content and discussion nowadays seems to just be talking about other people who are not presently there to defend themselves or clarify their opinions. This is like what you saw at Amfest, for example, where every speech was just about another person who was not presently giving a speech, except for like JD Vance, who actually gave like a real speech. But Tucker Carlson, I was a big fan of this guy when he was going on his run in 2020. I mean, you remember, if you've been watching the content for a while, it was unbelievable to me and to Americans to see their opinions articulated at scale, where you had a guy who was like the primetime spot on Fox News, took over for Bill O'Reilly after he was fired, and now he goes on this turn. And that was in 2016, I think, maybe 2017. Tucker Carlson takes over. And then in 2020, Americans are extremely anxious because there are race riots everywhere. You've obviously got the COVID lockdowns. And Tucker Carlson basically went on a run where you've maybe heard me say before, I think that was one of like 3 things which actually got us to where we are now. If you are aligned with reality enough to concede that where we are now is far preferable to where we were 15 years ago, I would ascribe that progress to 3 things. One of which, of course, being the descent from the golden escalator. The second of which I think actually being his run on Fox News in 2020, what Tucker was saying. So that was obviously very inspiring to me. I was very excited by that. I became something of a Tucker Carlson loyalist. If you've been to my dwelling, the first thing you saw when you walked in was a canvas print of Tucker Carlson laughing in an interview for, I think, GQ magazine, where they were trying to paint him as a racist or whatever for holding normal opinions, and he did his laugh, and it was a great photo. I had that displayed among other kind of, political iconography in my dwelling. And now I'm literally syndrome. Like looking at what this guy has chosen to become, and I'm like tearing it down. And I don't, by the way, like people are going to hear that, and instead of just like assessing it for what it is, they're going to assume it's because he's too based about this issue, and I'm trying to shut him down. Dude, like what unfortunately seems to be the case is what we liked about Tucker was that Tucker had like Blake Neff writing for him. Then Blake Neff went to go work for Charlie Kirk. Tucker had Greg Ree writing for him. Greg Ree now works for Matt Walsh. So absent guys who are like good on the issues, I don't really like what I've been seeing, which, we can all cast stones, we can all critique or whatever. But what's happening now seems to be very counterproductive. And I haven't talked about it because I don't care enough to like, this guy doing that. It all comes across as very cynical audience capture. I'm not interested in that. I just want to keep my head down and tell the truth. But somebody sent me this clip yesterday. I literally couldn't believe it. Just watch.
And whenever there's a lone gunman, just some crackpot. Hey, these crackpots, I noticed that a lot of the time they do stuff that really benefits the most powerful interests in the world. I tell you what, the powerful should start using these lone gunmen because, there's a natural alliance. It's a good fit. It's like Coca-Cola and McDonald's. The two of them go down like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and the Olympics, like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, the Olympics, and satanic festivals where you mock Christian imagery. The whole thing should get together. And if you find people that are prominent and outspoken and willing to risk their lives, probably what you should do is shoot them dead and then blame like something that will work in the culture, like, I don't know, trans people. that would work. Knowing in your heart of hearts that Christ would love and minister to all of us, seeing us all as one family. I'm not interested in race. I'm not interested in colour or skin or sexuality, although I am a bit interested in sexuality. All of you don't make a god out of it, whether you're a heterosexual, homosexual, single, celibate, wherever you are. Anyway, so I got in a lot of trouble. But it was the first time I got in trouble. I learned from it.
Wait, I just want to pause and say, note to the editors of this, please clip that. That was like my favorite thing I've ever heard. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry.
I just like, dude, like, what are you doing? What is that? First of all, the articulation of like how Christians are addressing the trans issue is with nothing but generosity and charity and praying for these people. And how are we repaid for that? I mean, we're repaid by these people coming into Christian schools and committing mass shootings and killing Christian children, which is not to say that we should abandon praying for them, but it is to say that Christianity exists in a far more healthy expression when it rules with an iron fist, when it is confident enough in what it believes about the world and about the truth of our existence to actually govern, to actually construct a society that is not agreeable, that is actually quite disagreeable, because it is the role of the government, which everybody acknowledges, even secular political theorists would acknowledge, the role of the government is to incentivize good behavior. So understood within a Christian context, which is how the entire United States project is supposed to be understood. I mean, you go read the founding texts of American political philosophy prior to the revolution. A model of Christian charity, Mayflower, I mean, literally all of it is viewing America as a continent to be something that is meant to fulfill the promise of God, something that if we keep God's laws, we are going to be blessed, and if we do not keep God's laws, we are going to be cursed worse than people who have dwelled in the desert. It's going to be very bad for us. They viewed literally the entire American project as something to construct a perfect society to worship Jesus Christ, where they saw faults in England, faults in other parts, faults even with Catholics, of course, and this was going to be something that was a much more pure, authentic, real, reverent distillation of Christianity. And the reason I say that is because it's like this very just sort of dishonest framing where you can like appeal to the trans thing like a buzzword, where it's like, oh, I don't know, we're just going to blame like what, trans people? Like kind of, like, are we not? Are trans people not the most like militant class of leftists? Are these not the people who are showing up to demonstrations where young children are being ushered in to watch transvestite strippers perform? These are the people who are out there in black bloc with ARs, intimidating Christians who, by the way, what are they out there doing? Are the Christians who are out there screaming at them? Are the Christians who are out there being rude? No, they're praying. I was there in Dallas when this happened, when this issue, by the way, blew up into a big thing because Tucker Carlson covered it. Remember that? The Drag Queen Story Hour in Dallas at Mr. 2022? I was there. Producer Blake was there. We saw this. Did we see the Christians being mean, blaming it on freaking trans stuff for no reason? And also, the suspect in this case, sorry, was he not dating a trans person? Is that not a thing that happened? I just don't understand. And why are we like laughing about this, dude? Like, this is a guy. Imagine laughing like this while discussing one of your close friends being heinously murdered in cold blood. I literally, I can't even get angry about it because it's just like confusing to me. And I'm not trying to concern troll. It's just like, it's so disheartening to see how people are treating what is probably the most significant political moment in at least the last year. I mean, the Trump administration or assassination attempt, obviously, but in terms of political assassinations, we haven't seen anything like this in 60 years. And even the MLK assassination, frankly, I don't think was as monumental as this. I mean, obviously, the legacy of that and what that represents for civil rights is one thing. But the way that we're speaking about this with the whole like, oh, isn't it convenient how all of these assassinations benefit the most powerful people in the world? What do? What have we been saying they do since the beginning? We have been saying that these kinds of asymmetrical assassination attempts or assassinations occur because of a deliberate creation of incentives by legacy media and by new media. Whether you're a Hassan Piker fan or you're tuning into MSNBC, this is content that is meant to radicalize people, hoping and crossing fingers that 1 in every 10,000 actually picks up a gun and goes and follows the conclusions of what the broadcaster is communicating to them. That is how this works, because it's perfect plausible deniability. Because in America, unfortunately, we don't have laws that say you can just go round up everybody who disagrees with you politically. That would be kind of hilarious and convenient. Unfortunately, we don't have that. And so if you spend decades inciting this kind of violence against Trump supporters, against Donald Trump, against his allies, his political allies, what is going to happen? Eventually, one of these people is going to do something like that. And what are they going to write on the shell casings? Hey, fascist, catch. This is Hassan Piker. This is MSNBC. This is literally all of that. They all wear the blood on their hands. So yeah, it does benefit the most powerful people in the world. And people notice that it does actually kind of, that's like the smoking gun, right? Literally. But instead of taking that ire and channeling it in a positive direction politically, where it's like, okay, we can clearly see the most powerful people in the world, which is to say the global left, they have a problem with American nationalism. They have a problem with American sovereignty. They have a problem with an outspoken Christian. This guy ends up getting killed because all of social media and all of media generally were describing him to be, if not Hitler, then Hitler's top guy. So he gets killed, and instead of recognizing what those incentives are, why they exist, we now have to dissipate all of that anger and all of that righteous indignation into fucking bullshit, into Egyptians, into conspiracy theorizing, relitigating the Kennedy assassination, the French Foreign Legion, just fucking bullshit that gets nobody anywhere. And that's exactly the point, which is why this content is so popular, just as all of the content describing Charlie Kirk as, if not Hitler, then Hitler's top guy was so popular. It's all the same thing. It's literally the cleanup crew. It's erasing evidence. It is masking the trail, because now the national conversation moved on so quickly from being a legitimate concern from right-wing people about this, alienation from normal people towards the left, seeing how they were celebrating this, how they were claiming credit for this. They were taking a victory lap before Charlie's body even hit the ground. People were seeing that, and now the whole conversation is at best a meme, true crime stuff for bored suburban women, at worst like completely just an op, you know? Like, nobody is doing this whole like lone gunman thing. It's a total straw man. You are misrepresenting the argument and you are laughing about it, so you don't even take it seriously. This is very clearly a leftist who was groomed and radicalized by other leftists who, by the way, universally call for violence against normal white patriots. Yes, universally. They all wear the patches. Death before detransition. What does that mean? That literally means that when Christians want to occupy government and prevent the deliberate grooming of children into questioning their gender identity, whatever that means, taking black market hormones, again, created by these people in these like weird little communities, it literally means they would take up arms and kill people who are trying to do that before they would concede that is all possible. And so what's our solution to this? We articulate the most lukewarm, pusillanimous articulation of faith, of society. Oh, what are you going to blame gay people? What are you going to blame trans people? Jesus says love everybody. Jesus says love everybody. How are you different from a Methodist? I mean, no offense to my Methodist patriots, I guess. How are you different from one of those churches that waves a pride flag outside? What are you saying if not that? If you ask like some butch priest at one of these churches why Z is displaying the pride flag outside of their church, they would say the same thing. Because Jesus says love everybody. Okay, I mean, I think he said a little bit more than that, but I guess I understand what you're saying. Russell Brand, why are you saying that? Why are you redirecting literally by force? You are dragging a conversation about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, kicking and screaming into being about, well, Jesus actually said love everybody. Who are you to tell me that, honestly, dude? This guy just put out a book about how he lived his entire life as like a total degenerate, and then like 5 seconds ago he realized that like Jesus loves him. If you read more of the Bible than just like Jesus loves everybody, typically what tends to happen is if you do that, maybe you shouldn't try to make yourself into the poster boy of Christianity. Maybe you should spend some time in meditation, in private prayer. Maybe you should just basically go away. I don't think it does anybody any favors to make the faces of the Christian faith people who are, by all means, just very, we'll say, troubled people who have had a little bit of dysfunction. Also, I'm pretty sure this guy's facing like a bunch of rape charges anyway, so that tends to be another pattern we see is people who find out that they're about to have all these skeletons fall out of their closet. They immediately begin this, like, you know, come to Jesus arc. And then, you know, if you criticize them, it's because, oh, what? You don't believe in the power of salvation? I don't know, dude. I believe in not like defanging Christians who are concerned about the future of their country, who are concerned that their children are going to be gunned down in schools because the schools are not adequately teaching the love everybody message, as if that would even matter, as if like a trans person is going to view that to be like a legitimate cutoff. Like, oh, this Christian school spent X amount of minutes saying love everybody. I guess I won't target them. I'll just go to this Christian school because they didn't spend so many minutes saying that we have to like just literally love everybody. Like, what are you doing, dude? That was the most blackpilling thing in the wake of the Kirk assassination, actually, which I guess we haven't moved on from, is I was going to all of these vigils, whether it was the one in Arizona, which I thought was great, or the ones that were just privately held on different university campuses, different churches. And the message that I kept hearing was that now more than ever, we have to pray and we have to forgive because we are not them. We cannot be angry. We cannot possess within us feelings of indignation, feelings of wanting revenge. I don't have a feeling of wanting revenge. I don't feel like getting even. I don't even know how I would quantify that. I don't think it could be quantified. What I want to happen is for bad people to be less able to do bad things. I want for people who may be compelled to do bad things to realize that this will not be fruitful for them. They will fail and they will be punished. They will certainly not be made into heroes. They will not be martyred. They will not be made into folk heroes or the most dysgenic class of people to ever exist on American soil. That is like what I want. And when you try to like weaponize my faith against me by spamming the only thing you know, which is love everybody, love everybody, love everybody. What are you doing? Or do you really want me to do that? Is that what you're trying to remind me of? Is that like the effective point? You really are concerned that right now, all of the problems in America going on, it's just that conservatives are not loving everybody sufficiently. If conservatives only loved everybody more, then maybe we could make a little bit of patriot progress. I don't believe that you believe that. Why are you occupying a right-wing media space and saying that, dude? Do you really believe that that's where the calls are coming from in society? All of our problems that we're dealing with right now, the disintegration, we all seem to be experiencing it, sort of a knife fight, right? Things are getting kind of hot. It's like an arms race. And you think that the best use of your time is not to go talk to the left, who are obviously insane in doing all of this, such as by like killing Charlie Kirk, for example. Your solution is to come and occupy a right-wing media space and do what? Defang it, tone police it, tell it it's not being loving enough, and mock them too, actually. You are laughing like a chimpanzee, mocking people for believing the assassination when he expresses himself in terms of his political involvement, what he believed he was doing by this action. You are mocking them for that. So if I were a cynic, if I were a guy who's just asking questions, I would maybe say that that's the point. I would maybe say that the point is actually that you wouldn't be accepted by the left because they don't love you, because they are not loving people. They are people who are driven, actually animated by resentment. And so given that you could not hang over there, you wash up and you find yourself on the right, because the problem we have is actually that we're too loving and we're too forgiving, and you can be a complete and total fucking idiot for your entire life. And the second you say one thing that is remotely sympathetic to an idea that we remotely hold, we're going to put you on. Congratulations, disaffected leftist number 57. You get to be on our shows and tell us, about how we really just need to like love everybody. It's like the most transparent thing I've ever seen. And so, okay, what is the effect of that? You've got a right wing. We're angry. We're recognizing the threat that we're facing. Now we get disaffected leftist 57 to come and tell us in language that we understand, you need to love everybody more. You need to not let them divide us. We need to not focus on race and religion and sexuality and all these other things that they are using to divide us. And the real message is just sit down and take it and love everybody while they trample over you and piss on your grave. That is what that means in effect. So I have no tolerance for it. I have no idea why Tucker is indulging in this kind of stuff, platforming this, the Ian Carroll thing. Again, I'm not tone policing. I don't give a shit. Do what you're going to do. It is disheartening to see that somebody who you think has good instincts is actually just the product of their writing staff, which I guess makes sense if you look at, how he spent his first couple decades in journalism. He was a neocon. He was the bow tie neocon guy. And it's like, okay, dude, do your thing. And then I guess he was based in red pills when he started hanging around based in red pill people. Absent that, it's just like this. It's just like, what are we doing, dude? So, and it sucks because the only people who can meaningfully present some kind of opposition to that are people who are like neocons, or people who you don't want being the face of that opposition, because they're just trying to assimilate all of right-wing politics back into the neoconservative cause anyway. So it's like a horrible dynamic where the patriot loses every time, because either your representation is completely retarded or it's not actually your representation. And maybe even the retarded representation isn't yours either. But I couldn't believe that video, dude. And so, I felt like we had to talk about it. I mean, again, these are people that are supposed to be friends. These are people that are supposed to be comrades, compatriots in this fight together. And now we're doing this like cutesy, generic, love everybody Christianity in a conversation about their assassination that eventually, their children are going to have to like grow up and watch. It's just like, I have no words. Anyway, speaking of things I have no words for, I saw a classroom that was being led, and maybe it was a story time or something, by Mamdani, by Barack Obama. This is like one of those man-made horrors beyond my comprehension, truly. Take a look.
We are fine. Alone, we're fine. Alone and together, we are at our best. Who wants to be at their best?
It's crazy because every part of that video, whether it's the students or the people reading the story, looks like you just hit shuffle. Like you just took the entire global population and you just hit shuffle. And then you got like 25 people or so and you just put them inside of an American classroom. And, that kind of stuff like works for a time, like literally, story time, reading books, kids are all gathered on the carpet. The problem starts when you get to be a little bit older, when now all of a sudden these people are actually going to have to begin learning things that will make them into good citizens, that will make them able to contribute to society. When you're a kid, it's basically daycare. Let's be honest. You're going and you're learning about shapes and numbers and all of that. And it's a good foundation that you can, build upon later on. But functionally, it is daycare. The problem is when you have demographics which do not come from countries which traditionally have something like, I don't know, an academic ambition, that daycare starts to actually prolong into higher grades. So you don't really lock in when you're in second grade, third grade, even first grade. All of a sudden you get to be middle school. You get to be even in high school before you really start like locking in, taking education seriously. And in many cases they don't. And the American students suffer as a result, who, by the way, American students still are in the top 5 globally for our performance on the PISA in terms of how actually like academically inclined we are, how academically gifted we are. And it seems to be foreign populations that are dragging our scores down because they just don't have an interest in education. And so schools have compensated for that with things like grade inflation, which is artificially awarding higher marks to students, which then diminishes the overall value of the grade point average. So now you can be a student, you can be doing well in school, you've got a 3.9. Guess what? So does somebody who should not have a 3.9. People are now evaluating your scores together, understanding that they don't really know what any of this means. They're probably going to go with the guy who shouldn't have the 3.9 because his name sounds like he's from Bangladesh or something, and you're just like a normal white kid from a flyover state or something. I don't know. So yeah, you've got grade inflation. You've got just general, you see fights going on, all this other stuff. And again, when you're 5 years old, it's pretty simple, right? Everybody's energized. Everybody's disruptive. Everybody wants to talk and laugh and play on the playground. But when you start getting older and you're supposed to kind of mature, fall into your place, prepare to carry the torch of civilization, it's not exactly what you're seeing in these kinds of classrooms, and it's certainly disheartening to see. I don't know what the solution to that is other than sending them all back. We need to go bye-bye. We need to undo the last 60 years of American immigration policy. American schools are 2 things. They are schools, and they are specifically schools for Americans. Right now, the function is neither. I don't even know what you would call them, but certainly somebody who had attended an American school 100 years ago would not recognize anything going on in American schools today. They may as well be abandoned. They are barbarians occupying the shells of a great civilization, which has been all but conquered, but it's okay. We can undo it. Not a problem. They might pick at the bones of our civilization, but, nothing a little patriot determination can't undo, right? Maybe. We'll find out on Wednesday, where I'll see you again. But in the meantime, be sure to go to Apple, Spotify, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review with your thoughts, so long as they are 5-star oriented. And yeah, we'll see you back here in just a couple days. Thank you so much for watching. May God bless you. May God bless your family. Pray for producer Blake. It was the big day. Wow. All right. See ya.